Hey guys, Mark here. I am, just so you know, this video is going to be cut into two pieces. You'll watch one today and one in the next session. And if the video ends abruptly, you'll know why. We'll catch up in the next class. So, that said, let's get going. Today we're going to talk about international business and what it's like to compete in global markets. So, my new background is from the Andrew Dixon White Library at Cornell University. So we're going to look at the role of and the importance of global markets and the comparative advantage and absolute advantage in terms of global trade. We'll talk a little bit about economics and why that's important. We'll look at the importance of importing and exporting, and again, like most new chapters, we will go through some key terms so we all have a common lexicon, a common language to talk about business in. And we'll look at some strategies in reaching global markets and explain the role of multinational corporations within those markets. We'll look at some of the things that affect trading in global markets, and we'll look at some of the advantages and disadvantages of protectionism. We'll look at what tariffs are and what they mean to a country in both positive and negative aspects, and some examples that we've seen in common markets, and we'll look at how things are changing on a worldwide basis. So, Canada is small in terms of population. We have about 37 million people. There are 7.8 billion, give or take, in 194 countries around the world. So Canada as a market, as a group of consumers, really is quite small. Some of the things that have impacted Canada and the US are auto industries. What we've seen in auto industries is a shifting away from Canada and the US to other parts of the world. We've seen job loss, we've seen restructuring of major companies, we've seen major companies get in severe financial difficulties. Companies like General Motors, companies like Ford. What we have seen in Canada is we actually have one major company on the global market that is known for auto parts, and that's Magna International. What else? So we are looking for opportunities in global markets, especially as a small country, right? In order for us to grow our companies, we can only go so far with 37 million people. We need access to the United States. We need access to Europe. We need access to Asia. And as the economies of Africa and South America continue to develop, we'll want access to those countries, or those countries in those continents as well. Okay? So, as a percentage basis, where are we? North America only has 7.4% of the world's population. Europe, 10.7%. Asia, 60% of the world's population. Africa, about 15%. South America, about 6%. And we got a few scattered people here in Australia, about 0.5% down in Australia. Okay? So, where are the markets? Where are the potentials? So, a few terms. Exporting. Selling our goods and services into another country. Quite straightforward. Importing. Buying goods and services from another country. And free trade is the movement of goods and services between countries without political or economic barriers. Okay, many of you have heard about the North American Free Trade Agreement, or the new revision of it that Trump and Trudeau and the President of Mexico signed. The idea is to have free trade between those countries under certain guidelines. There are free trading blocs throughout the world. There's a European free trading bloc. There's an ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, free trading bloc. Okay, so there's all kinds of free trading blocs because what we've realized is that trade is good. And if you haven't taken economics yet, one of the things that you will learn is that if my country makes everything and everything that I make is more expensive than in your country, I clearly want to trade. I want cheaper goods, right? So it's good for me. Here's the thing, and we can prove this through economics, that it's also good for your country to trade. And you say, hey, wait a second, if I make everything cheaper, how can it be good for my country to trade? It can be good for your country to trade because we are relatively better at making different things. So I sell you the things that I am relatively better at making, and you sell me the things that you are relatively better at making. And that actually works out better for both of us. So, bottom line is we have a difficult time making everything that we want and need. Okay? If we can't make everything that we want and need, we need to trade with countries that can make those things and can make them more than what they want and need. So they have a surplus, they have extra stuff. They can make extra stuff. So they sell the extra stuff so they can get more money, and that allows us to buy stuff. Think about what country you're from. I'm from Canada, so I'll use Canada as an example. Okay. What is one thing that we want and we're convinced we need? We want and need these things, our cell phones, right? Canada can make those, but guess what? They are made much more or less expensively in other countries. So we buy cell phones that are made in other countries. Okay. Countries like Canada have a lot of natural resources. We are a large, physically large country with very few people, and we have been blessed with a whole lot of natural resources. Oil, gas, the tar sands. Interesting to see who thinks the tar sands are a blessing. The tar sands are a stockpile of oil mixed in with sand, essentially. We have massive amounts of forests. We have a forest in northern Ontario that's bigger than Great Britain. It's so big. We have a lot of trees. We actually have the technological know-how to retrieve them, in this case. Some countries don't. Some countries have natural resources and don't have the resources to get to them. Okay. Some countries have the technology but don't have the natural resources, so they need to import those natural resources. Japan is a great example. Japan imports a lot of wood from Canada. Why? Canada has a lot of wood. Japan doesn't. Japan is very heavily populated for the size of the country. They do not have massive amounts of forests like Canada does. So Japan will import our forests, and they'll make their furniture and things out of those. And then they'll sell the finished furniture back to Canada. So, free trade. Free trade is the movement of goods and services without political or economic barriers. Okay? What does that mean? That means that we're not charging excess tariffs and taxes on goods when they come into our country. That means that we're not specifically targeting something to get back at somebody. Here's something that happens quite frequently, especially in the last few years. The President of the United States gets mad at Canada for something and says, hey, all of your lumber, we're adding an extra 20% on to the price of all of your lumber. So any piece of lumber that goes into the United States now has a 20% tariff on it, or tax. Guess what? It becomes more expensive, fewer people want to buy it. And he just doesn't do it to Canada. He'll do it to China. He'll do it to European countries. Okay? So, what are some of the pros and cons of not having things like that happen? Okay? One of the pros is there's over 7 billion, pushing 8 billion people out there who need stuff and want stuff. If we have the ability to sell to those people, guess what? That helps our businesses, that helps our countries, that helps our economies grow. Okay? I talked a little before about comparative advantages. Right? Remember, we can prove through economics that even though my country makes everything and it's more expensive than your country, who makes the same things, it is in both our best interests. I sell the stuff to you that I make relatively better, and you sell the stuff to me that you make relatively better. Okay? Let's look at, I don't know, let's pick any two things. Let's look at chairs and garbage cans. Okay? Costs you $10 to make a chair, $20 to make a garbage can. It costs me $15 to make a chair and $45 to make a garbage can. Which one do you make relatively better and which one do I make relatively better? Well, your garbage can costs twice as much as your chair. My garbage can costs 3 times as much as my chair. You make garbage cans relatively better. Your garbage can costs, your chair costs half as much as your garbage can. My chair costs 1/3 as much as my garbage can. So I'll sell you garbage cans and you sell me chairs, and we'll both wind up being better off in the end. With global competition, it allows us to keep prices down. Right? We all want to pay the least amount possible for a quality good. So by keeping prices down, what happens? We can buy more stuff, we have more for savings, we can reinvest. Inflation doesn't curtail economic growth. What does that mean? Well, if we have more money, we can reinvest it in our businesses or start new businesses. If we don't have that money, we can't. So if we're not investing in business, guess what? Our economic growth is stifled. You can't grow a business without cash. It's that simple. You'll learn that in your finance course. You can't grow a business without cash. Okay? What else? Free trade inspires innovation for new products and keeps us competitively challenged. Okay? Sometimes people in other places have interesting ideas that develop into new products faster than we can. That could literally knock our product out of the water. That forces us to be more innovative. It forces us to be more competitive. It forces us to stay on top of our game. That's good. The ability to move capital, by capital we mean money. So the uninterrupted flow of capital between countries allows what? Well, it allows businesses to grow. Remember, I just said we can't grow a business without money. Money, 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 money. If you were sitting in my class right now, one thing that you would notice is every single day, first thing I do when I walk into class is I draw a $sign on the board. And the second thing I do is I draw a number. Okay? Why do I draw a $sign? I draw a $sign because business is about money. Period. Okay? So, if we have the influx of foreign capital, if we have access to more money, we can what? Help our businesses grow faster. If we have access to more money, it what? It helps keep the interest rates low. Why? Because if the only place I can go to get money is the bank, I go borrow money from the bank kind of has the power there, right? If they've got the power, they can say, oh, interest rate is 10%. You want the money? You pay the 10%. You don't want to pay the 10%, you don't get the money. If we have money coming in from other sources, we can what? Maybe the money coming in from another country is 4%. All of a sudden the bank's like, whoa, wait a second. They can get money at 4%, we're charging 10%. Guess what? Nobody's going to take our money. We better lower our interest rates. What are some of the downsides of having free trade? This is a tough one, is that we can lose jobs. Okay? And we've seen this over and over again. What happens? Well, if we import goods, why would we do that? Well, generally because they're less expensive. Why? Because they're made elsewhere with workers who are paid less than they are here. Okay? So if in Canada I have to pay somebody $18 an hour, but in Cambodia I can pay somebody $5 a day to do the same work, why wouldn't I? Okay. So we can lose jobs, and we've seen this. We've seen it in the auto industry. We've seen it in a lot of manufacturing. That's where a lot of jobs have gone away, is in manufacturing. Clothing. We used to make a lot of clothes in North America decades and decades ago. We don't anymore. Why? Because other places in the world can make them with just as good quality at much less expense because the wages are lower. Shoes. We don't have much in the way of shoes. Big manufacturing. Autos. Don't have a lot of auto manufacturing compared to what we used to. We still have some, but not as much as we used to. Auto parts. Why does Magna do so well? Here's the thing. The markup on auto parts is immense. Absolutely immense. Okay? So there's a lot of profit in auto parts. If you bought all the pieces that are replaceable for your car from a Canadian auto parts store, it would cost like close to 10 times as much as the original value of the car. I went into Lordco the other day. Lordco is a local car parts company that has ridiculously high prices to begin with, but I was pretty sure they had it. And I wanted a plastic seatbelt retainer. What that is that's that little piece of plastic that stops your seatbelt from sliding down to the bottom when it's not attached to yourself or to the seat, right? So you get in, you reach over, you pull it down, and you reach where the clasp is, right? Well, what keeps it there? A little piece of plastic. Actually, it's two little pieces of plastic that fit together. Do you know what they wanted to charge me for those two little pieces of plastic? $17 for two little pieces of plastic. The actual cost to make those two little pieces of plastic was probably 6 cents. And they're charging me $17. I clearly did not buy them. Okay? So, we're at risk of losing work to other countries. What else? Workers may be forced to accept pay cuts who threaten to move their jobs away. I don't know of any examples where this has happened, but I'm sure it probably has. Right? It's like, hey, we've got a choice. I can go make this in Cambodia or China or somewhere else, or you guys take a 20% pay cut. Okay. So we're not only losing manufacturing jobs, we also have the potential loss of service jobs and white-collar jobs. Okay. Most of you, when you go out into the workforce after a business degree, will be working in what's called a white-collar job. where you wear a shirt and tie kind of job, moving into management kind of job. Okay. Service jobs, we've already seen a movement out of North America, out of Canada. Call centers is one of the biggest things that has moved. A lot of call centers have moved into India. Why? Well, India has a large population that speaks English and is well educated, and many people are willing to work at a call center for less than what they're willing to work for in North America. Okay. That's business. One company in the United States actually bought an old cruise ship, and they decided that having their call center in India was too far away. They couldn't keep track of what was going on as easily. So they bought a cruise ship, and they floated the cruise ship out just off of the international waters off of California, and they actually flew their workers from India to California, stuck them on this cruise ship that was 12.5 miles off the coast, so they were in international waters, and had them run their call center off of a cruise ship so they could pay more attention to what was going on. And that was more cost effective than hiring American workers. What else? Domestic workers can lose their comparative advantage when competitors build advanced production operations in low-wage countries. Okay? One of the ways that we've been able to compete and retain some jobs is by building high-end production facilities. Think Tesla factory. Okay? You need relatively few people to run the Tesla factory compared with a normal automobile factory. So what happens if we build a Tesla factory in a place where all of the workers make 80% less than American workers? Right? That can give us some problems. That can reduce our comparative advantage. So, basis of comparative advantage theory. A country should sell to other countries those products that it produces most effectively and efficiently, and buy from other countries those products it cannot produce as effectively or efficiently. This was my chair and garbage can example. Okay. Japan is really good at building quality cars and electronics. Canada is really good at using our natural resources. Forestry, agriculture, mineral products. We are really good at getting those things out of the ground and onto ships. Okay. We are not as good at building cars or electronics. So what do? We ship trees, food, and minerals to Japan. Japan ships us cars and electronics. So, absolute advantage theory. It's when a country has a monopoly over a specific product or is able to produce it more efficiently than everybody. Okay? An absolute advantage in natural resources may not last forever. Diamond production in South Africa. Okay? Global competition has caused some absolute advantages to decrease. Diamonds. Love diamonds. Diamonds are an amazing industry. One of the things that shook diamonds, the diamond industry, was a few years ago when they discovered diamonds in Canada's north. We have some major diamond mines in Canada's north. Why did it shake up the diamond industry? The diamond industry is controlled by a company called De Beers, D-E-B-E-E-R-S. And De Beers has controlled the diamond industry for centuries. A lot of companies have strategic plans. A lot of companies have long-term strategic plans. I would say De Beers has the longest term strategic plan ever. Their strategic plan is to dominate the diamond industry forever. Literally forever. Okay? So, when Canada discovered diamonds up in its north, it shook their plans. It did not destroy them, it did not shake them for too long, but it shook them. Okay? The amount of diamonds that were discovered in Canada's north is not significantly big enough that it would ruin De Beers' virtual monopoly and stranglehold on the diamond industry. Okay. A little background on the diamond industry. A place where you exchange diamonds for money is called a bourse. It's a room that has tables and chairs. You walk into a bourse and there are tables that are approximately 5 to 6 feet long, so 1.5 meters to 1.80 meters long. There's one chair on either side, and on the table is a kind of a neoprene kind of mat. Okay, very often has soft material on the top. If you've ever gone into a jewelry store at the mall and asked to see something, they'll pull out like a mini version to put it on. You know, can I see those earrings? And if they're expensive earrings, they'll, you know, put this little mat out. It's kind of like that, but much bigger. Okay. And the diamond buyer and the diamond seller arrange to meet. They meet. They go in. They sit down. The diamond seller pulls his briefcase up. The diamond buyer knows exactly what he is expecting because the seller has told him what he is bringing. I am bringing 20 diamonds of this size and this quality in this cut. Okay. The seller takes the diamonds out. He puts them on the mat. The buyer picks them up, inspects them with his magnifier, with his little loop magnifier. Yes, they have the little ones that fit in your eye, and you squeeze your eye around them, and he examines all the diamonds. He puts them down. He puts his little eyepiece away. The diamonds are still sitting on the table, and they discuss price. They reach an agreement on price. They shake hands. The buyer picks up the diamonds, puts them in his little bag, opens his own briefcase, puts them in his briefcase, and he walks out of the bourse with the diamonds. No paperwork. No money changes hands. The diamonds go from the seller to the buyer. The money changes hands later. The entire industry has run this way for hundreds of years. Your livelihood in the diamond industry rests solely on your reputation. If you screw over the other guy once, you will never work in the industry again. Ever. Okay? It's operated like this forever. Most of the people who are diamond buyers and sellers are Jewish from the Hasidic Jewish faith. Hasidic Jewish faith is a very strict Jewish faith. The men wear all black. You'll see them with kind of a wide-brimmed hat, and they usually have a little curly Q ringlet hair kind of thing. And this is how it's operated for years and years and years. It happens this way in Holland. It happens in London. It happens in New York. And if you screw somebody over once, you are done. It just doesn't happen. So, that's a little background on how diamond buying and selling. And I find that aspect just fascinating, that it is entirely reputation-based. So, back to De Beers. Okay. De Beers mines the diamonds, they store the diamonds, they sell the diamonds. Their 1,000-year strategic plan includes some very thought out price fixing. What do I mean by that? Let's think about how many diamonds there are in the world. Let's think about how many diamonds there might be that have ever been bought or sold in the world, that have ever been produced, that have been owned by somebody from the beginning of time. Okay? Millions, hundreds of millions, I don't know. It's got to be a big amount, right? Every single diamond that's ever been made and bought or sold by anybody or worn by somebody as jewelry or kept in a drawer because they thought it was pretty, I don't care. There's got to be a lot, right? De Beers has approximately 100 times that amount in their vault. Ready to go, ready to sell, cut, identified, classified, and ready to sell. 100 times every single diamond that's ever been seen by a non-diamond person like you or I. Isn't that amazing? This is their long-term strategy. This is part of their long-term strategy. They dig the diamonds up, they cut them, they clean them, they produce them, they store them. What would happen if we had some of those diamonds come out, or a bunch of those diamonds come out? What would happen to the price of diamonds? Well, economics will tell you supply and demand. We have a lot of supply. Guess what? Price is going to drop. Okay? So this is part of De Beers' long-term strategy to control the diamond market forever. Okay. So, hopefully you found that interesting. I actually think diamonds are quite fascinating. So, that's a case of an absolute advantage. Multinational firms. Okay, these are companies that have offices around the world. Here are 2 Canadian and 1 non-Canadian companies. Can you guess which the Canadian ones are? Well, you got a 2/3 chance. Bombardier, Sony, and Magna. I've already spoken about Magna, so you know that one's Canadian. And clearly, Sony's Japanese, so by default, Bombardier is the Canadian company. And all 3 of these companies have offices around the world and produce and sell to a global marketplace. Small business in Canada contributes somewhere between 25 and 40% to our GDP, our gross domestic product. Okay. Small business in Canada employs about 7 million people, and about 90% of all exporters by number, not necessarily by volume of export, but by number. Okay. We have some government agencies whose role it is to help businesses export. Foreign Affairs and International Trade Canada and EDC, which is the Export Development Corporation of Canada. They assist companies in international trade. Very often you will have trade missions where they will take a group of companies and set up a trip of China, or a trip to Europe, or a trip to the Middle East, or a trip to Africa or South America. And excuse me for a second. So the goal of these trade missions is to introduce your company to companies in these regions that you could potentially make deals and trade with. A lot of business comes out of these. I've been on 1 or 2 of these in the past, and it is a government-to-government facilitated meeting of private companies. So the Canadian government is really quite active in that because they realize that 37 million people, we need these opportunities in order to grow our companies and grow our economy. CBSA, the Canadian Border Services Agency. These are our border control guards. Okay, they ensure that the goods and services coming into Canada are compliant with our regulations, both federally and provincially. Okay. There is a Canadian version of the Border Show, which is really quite amusing compared to some of the other versions. I think the version of the show I like the best is the one from Colombia, because they catch all kinds of people with drugs. The Canadian one catches people bringing, like live chickens. The Colombian one catches people with 24 condoms full of cocaine in their stomach. Trying to bring a live chicken into Canada or trying to export cocaine out of Colombia. Yeah, one seems a little more interesting to me. So basically, trade is good for Canada, and it actually contributes to about 1 in 3 Canadian jobs. Okay, again, Canada, small population, need that trade to survive. So, let's look at some categories of products and what are some of the things that we do with them in terms of trade. Industrial goods and materials, metals, metal ores, chemicals, plastics, other industrial goods. Okay, things that we can dig out of the ground, we can make into things and sell to other people. Heavy machinery and equipment, industrial and agriculture machinery. Okay, clearly if we are good at harvesting trees and agriculture products, we're probably pretty good at what? Making the machines to get that stuff. Aircraft and other transportation equipment, that may have come from the same thing, that, hey, Canada's a physically big country with what? Not a lot of people. So to get across our country, we may have developed the ability to do that in an efficient manner. Energy products, again, digging stuff out of the ground, natural gas, petroleum, coal. Automotive products, we're good at making parts these days. In the early days, we were okay at making automobiles. We're good at designing stuff, too. Canada has shifted more towards a knowledge base, so we can design stuff, but we don't necessarily manufacture it. Agriculture and fishing products, again, a lot of natural resource-based stuff, right? We've been blessed with a good climate and access to a lot of coastline where we can get fish, a lot of empty land where we can grow fruits and vegetables, and have our cattle roam. Forestry products, lots of trees, and again, the technology to do stuff with those. Sawmills, pulp, things like that, we've gotten pretty good at. Consumer goods, again, we're pretty good at designing them, but not so good at making them. Apparel and footwear, certainly Aldo, if you've ever seen an Aldo store, Aldo is a worldwide brand that was started in Canada by an immigrant. Aldo is a billionaire off of designing shoes. Are the shoes made in Canada? Not so much anymore. Travel, again, big country, small group of people, we need to travel. Transport, air, land, water, commercial services, communication, construction, insurance, computer, those type of things, again, are service-based. And service-based is where we spend a lot of time in Canada, and there's a lot of value add to service-based. And lastly, government services. We do have a military, and the government does tend to support business as best they can. So, a little more in terms of definitions. Balance of trade. That's its ratio of exports and imports, right? If we have a positive balance of trade, we are exporting more than we're importing. If we have a negative balance of trade, we're importing more than we're exporting. Trade surplus is a favorable balance of trade when we are exporting more than we're importing. A trade deficit when we're importing more than we're exporting. Balance of payments. This is different than balance of trade. Okay. the difference between the money coming into the country and the money leaving the country, plus, here's the difference, plus the money flows from other factors, such as tourism, foreign aid, military expenditures, and foreign investment. Okay? So balance of payments includes the money from imports and exports, the trade portion, but also money from other sources. Tourism. What happens when the Canadian dollar is worth much less than the US dollar? Americans will vacation in Canada. That's a lot of money that is spent in Canada. What about foreign aid? Well, Canada tends to what? Canada tends to give money to other countries that need it. So that would go into that other country's balance of payments, positive balance of payments. Foreign investment. Canada is a good place for people to invest their money from other countries because we have a stable economy, a stable government, and it is a way for people in other countries that may be politically unstable to get their money to a relatively safe place. So very often Canada will be used as a place for